That transfer portal continues to stir and stir and stir. More departures from Tennessee's roster, but when are the Vols going to get somebody from the transfer portal? We'll talk on that and a little bit more here on your Mailbag edition of the show. It's your Tuesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you. Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you for being here today, making this your first listen. Shout out everydayers. And we've got a big, fun show coming up. Mailbag questions in segment 3. It's when you take over the show. And then the latest in portal activity for Tennessee. More players darting to the portal, and it's really taking a hit a certain position group. I'll tell you that here in a moment. This episode is brought to you in part by LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, so more players dart to the transfer portal. That is 2 more defensive backs, 2 more cornerbacks. Well, 1 cornerback and 1 reportedly, and Tamarion McDonald, a star player, more of a safety, but Tamarion McDonald has reportedly entered the transfer portal, or he's going to enter the transfer portal. In fact, VolQuest says his paperwork has been filed and his name should appear here in the coming days. But Tamarion McDonald and then DeShawn Rucker. That brings Tennessee's total up to 9 players in the transfer portal, 6 of which hail from the defensive backfield. More on that in a moment. But first, you guys want to know, who's Tennessee going to get, right? Obviously, Tennessee has narrowed in and made tight end the number 1 priority. Again, we know the names of Holden Stays, who was on campus for an official visit this past weekend. He's from Notre Dame, but he is taking other visits as well. And so Tennessee didn't close him down, and that is a little bit worrisome. He's at Washington on Monday. He'll be at Oklahoma later in the week, but Holden Stays already being at Tennessee, but you hope Tennessee can kind of survive this week. Tennessee coaches, Alec Ablin, assistant coach, tight end coach, and of course Josh Heupel, met with Kentucky tight end Jordan Dingle on Monday afternoon, hoping to get Jordan Dingle in for an official visit at some point in time this week. Dingle from Kentucky has played many games in this league, has started in this league, and he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, I do believe. 20 passes, 220 yards, and 3 touchdowns in 2022. This year, as we said on yesterday's show, limited action. He had 4 catches, 61 yards against Tennessee specifically in 2023, but was held to just a couple of games in 2023. But Dingle is another player that I think is going to start getting a lot of traction. Tennessee met with him yesterday, hoping to get him on campus for an official visit. So we will see what happens there. We mentioned Bauer Sharp, the southeastern Louisiana target from the SES level, former quarterback turned tight end. Tennessee likes him as well. If there's kind of a pecking order here, I would say Stays is 1, Dingle's 2, and Sharp is 3. But again, it's one of those where if one of those 3 say, hey, I want to be here, you take them immediately, because you have Ethan Davis on roster, who's going to play and start if healthy. You have Emmanuel Okoye on roster, who, again, I don't believe is ready to help this roster out in 2024. You don't have Jonathan Eccles in the class coming in. You need bodies at that position. If I were calling the shots, I would take 2 players from the transfer portal if they'll come and say to that group, hey, Ethan Davis is going to play. He knows the playbook. He's got the skill set we want. We're going to have him play no matter what. But you 2 coming in, whether it be Sharp or Dingle or Stays or whoever, we'd like to play 3 tight ends. Prove it. My point is, I would take whoever wants to come at the tight end position to Tennessee. As long as you're not a scrub, I would take him, because I think that's kind of where you are right now. So I would sound the alarm bell if I'm this staff, and obviously they're channeling on the tight end position very, very early in this cycle. Chris Braswell II is also a name that I mentioned on yesterday's show. He's a wide receiver from Tulane. All right, he's a guy that is kind of what Tennessee wants, an outside receiver. 6'2", 3-ish. Long, lengthy. Tennessee wants an outside receiver. Why does Tennessee want an outside receiver? Well, coming in via the committed class, You got a couple of wide receivers, including Mike Matthews, the 5-star, that can play that slot position. You also have Dante Thornton, who has experience playing the slot position if needed, along with Squirrel White. Need another outside body type receiver, and Chris Braswell, the second, is a guy that Tennessee has a lot of interest in right now. He was in town for a short period of time earlier this week, yesterday to be in fact. He's got, I think, 3 years of eligibility remaining, and he's going to go see a couple other schools this week as he's looking to make kind of a quick decision, but was in town, was meeting with Tennessee, and I think that's big. He's actually 6'5", 195 pounds. He's a little taller than I once said. 44 receptions, 711 yards, 5 touchdowns in 2023, and again, we'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining. So Chris Braswell II, kind of that wide receiver Tennessee's looking at right now. We talked about the tight end position. Holden Stays, Jordan Dingle, Bauer Sharp. I mentioned a defensive back on yesterday's show from UCLA. That might be a tall task, plus I believe his position coach at UCLA went ahead and took a job at USC. So, he's a really, really good prospect to begin with, but that might be a tall stretch. But there is a defensive back name mentioned in the Tennessee interest right now. Tennessee does have interest in Jalen Farmer, who has been playing 2 years for the Florida Gators, offensive lineman. Believe he's got multiple years of experience left remaining as well. So those are kind of some of those names at this moment for the University of Tennessee, who Tennessee is involved with. Again, kind of evolving as the day goes on. There'll be new names mentioned, but I kind of want to give you guys a rundown, the latest that we're hearing, essentially, Tennessee in the transfer portal. Now, Tennessee, again, go back to what I said a moment ago. 2 other defensive backs have entered the transfer portal. Now, at the time of this recording, things can change. Always have to put that disclaimer in there. Tennessee has had 9 players leave the roster to the transfer portal. And a lot of people are kind of freaking out about this. And I'll just leave it at this. I want to remind you guys, because I often forget as well, this is unusual. Again, college football is so weird and wacky right now because you introduce NIL, you have the COVID year of eligibility as well. All that just kind of happened at once. In normal years, a lot of these players that have left via the transfer portal who have 1 year of eligibility remaining would be out of eligibility. Warren Burrell would be out of eligibility. Brandon Turnage would be out of eligibility. Tamarion McDonald would be out of eligibility. Just some examples of guys who have entered the portal. And again, McDonald put his paperwork in on Monday. His name will officially appear here in the coming days. But those are just some examples of guys who would be out of eligibility in normal years. So it's kind of, actually McDonald wouldn't. He would have, no, McDonald would. Yeah, he played in 2020, 21, 22, 23. That's how math works. 4. So you're kind of having to deal with this problem, if you will, right now, whereas in 2 years you won't have to deal with all this. There won't be decisions to be made on should you allocate NIL funds for this older player to come back and play 1 more year, or should you reinvest that investment, if you will, to the transfer portal or to your traditional recruiting, opportunities and via NIL. So that's kind of the balancing act you're having to play right now. But Tamarion McDonald, I mean, he's one guy that, like Addison Nichols, in my opinion, he's kind of one guy, and really Danico Slaughter. I like a lot of these guys. I do. He's one of those guys where it's kind of like, okay, maybe you should have entertained bringing him back because he's got so much experience. He can play both safety and star, but it's intriguing to know kind of what that asking price was. And if it was too much, then obviously it's an easy decision to kind of let him walk. So Tamarion McDonald, 115 tackles throughout his 4 seasons at Tennessee, 8.5 TFLs, 4 interceptions, won the starting job at Star last year in fall camp, and that was really, really cool to see. Was hampered by injuries this year. DeShawn Rucker as well appeared in 24 games over 3 years at Tennessee, primarily as a reserve. But you've got 9 players in the portal at the time of this recording, 6 of which have hailed from the defensive backfield, okay? 2 of these players are out of eligibility, or 2 separate players are out of eligibility, Jalen McCullough, Kamal Haddon. You have 2 players who have yet to make decisions, who have another year of eligibility remaining. Will they test NFL waters? Will they come back and play for Tennessee? Will they go into the transfer portal? Don't know yet. But those 2 players are Gabe Judy-Lawley and Wesley Walker. Worth noting, Wesley Walker, to transfer again, would need to be a graduate student, and he would have to do that after the spring semester. So that's important to remember as well. So you've got 9 players in the portal from Tennessee, 6 of which in the defensive backfield. 2 guys separately have decisions to make. 2 other guys separately are out of eligibility. You have 9 returners on the roster right now in the defensive backfield. Christian Charles, Christian Conyer, Andre Turrentine, Ricky Gibson, Jordan Matthews, Jordan Thomas, Christian Harrison, John Slaughter, and Will Brooks. Will Brooks is a walk-on, but I put him in here because obviously he played some big snaps this year. And then you have 4 players currently committed for the class of 2024 in the defensive backfield. Boo Carter, Caleb Beasley, Marcus Gorey, Idris Farouk. And so, yeah, your secondary kind of getting a whole different look now. And I have some questions to get into later in the show when we get into our mailbag edition of the show, but I'll kind of tease it here. I've been calling for young players to play in the defensive secondary at times. I know a lot of fans have as well. Well, here you go. Here you go. Mailbag questions still to come right here on Locked On Vols. I do want to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for small businesses, you want to have as many top-tier candidates available at your disposal. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn's got a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours by using LinkedIn Jobs. Thankfully, LinkedIn Jobs, they've got an intuitive process making it quick and easy to help you put your resume online, your job description online, all that and more. Go check it out at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedInjobs.com/LockedOnCollege. LinkedInjobs.com/LockedOnCollege. Let me try that again. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free. One more time. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions do apply. So as we continue on with what I like to call silly season here in the month of December, when you've got transfer portal activity galore, players leaving your program, as we talked about in segment number 1, some names of interest that could be entering your program, again, as we talked about in segment number 1. There's also those COVID guys who have announcements to make on if they're going to return or not. And late on Monday evening, Gerald Mincey actually made his decision. And, I've kind of been assuming, and I've kind of been in my conversations, kind of acting like Gerald Mincey was going to be back. Technically, he was a redshirt junior, so he could have left. He could have went on and either pursued an NFL career. He could have went on and kind of left, and started to do life or whatever. He could have entered his name in the transfer portal. He was not a senior, so it's not like he had the option to go through senior day or whatnot. I don't know. It's a little bit different. Like Uncle Rico style. When I played at Carson Newman, I didn't play my last year. I had one more year of eligibility because I redshirted my freshman year. It's D2 football. It's time to move on with life. I had not taken many internships throughout college, and so I needed to get a head start on this career that I wanted to do. But I still had the opportunity to go through senior day and all that. I'm not sure kind of how all that works with Tennessee. I just know that Gerald Mincey didn't kind of go through that process, but he's still been one that we've been tracking. He's still been one that we've been following and saying, okay, well, has the option to come back? Will he, won't he? Decision to make. Well, he tweeted out about a little after 7 o'clock on Monday evening. He gave a shout out to the Vol Club, which of course is part of Spire, the collective for Tennessee, and said he signed through the 2024 season. So that all but assures that Gerald Mincey is going to be back. Gerald Mincey is going to be playing football for Tennessee. And when you look at that offensive line kind of moving forward for Tennessee, it's starting to take shape for 2024. So Cooper Mays is in the same boat. He has not made his announcement, but I feel like at this time he's probably going to be back. Javonte Spraggins, same situation. Has another year left. Hasn't made an announcement, but I think at this time, kind of leaning towards coming back. Dane Davis, Jackson Lampley, 2 guys who have filled in, and Dane Davis has played an awful whole lot of football. Both of those guys have a year left. Both of those guys did not go through senior day, neither did Cooper Mays. And both of those guys, I feel like, will be back. So, again, announcements to come, but you're starting to kind of see and kind of see what that offensive line could look like. John Campbell's announced he's already back. Gerald Mincey announces he's back. So they're your tackles. At bare minimum, those are your tackles next year, right? I feel like Dane Davis is going to be back, so that's going to be in the fold right there. You look at the interior, I feel like Cooper Mays is going to be back at center. I feel like Javonte Spraggins will be back. But again, where is he going to be health-wise? Because, of course, he tore up his knee there towards the end of the season. Jackson Lampley, I feel like, is going to be back, so he's an option at guard. Ollie Lane is gone. J.J. Crawford is gone. Andre Carrick will be back. So that offensive line, where it was a lot of questions and honestly kind of concerning at points and times, you feel much better about what that 2024 offensive line is going to look like, assuming everything else goes according to plan and Mays and Spraggins and some of these other guys do come back. But what we do know right now is your bookend tackles are back. And if you're Nico Iamaleava, you got to feel really, really good about that. Now, durability is another issue. Those guys have got to stay healthy. John Campbell missed the last couple of games of the regular season. Gerald Mincey, I'll tell you this. Gerald Mincey showed a lot to me this year, if that makes sense. Not like he had anything to prove to me. I mean, who am I, right? But the fact that he was going out there and just giving it everything he had, I mean, it showed guts, showed toughness. He was not healthy. And this is something that I think he's going to be able to play in the bowl game. We'll continue to track it. But, I mean, this is something that is not going to get healthy until you get off it and rest for a while. And really the back half of the season, I mean, he had a real knee issue. And you would see him go out there and try to give it a go and continue to come off the field limping and not make it through games. But he was trying. And in this era of opting out, in this era of leaving your teammates out to dry, essentially, man, he didn't do that. So I gained some respect for Gerald Mincey this year. I really, really did. And so I'm excited to see him come back. Now, is he the role? I'm not trying to say anything about, I mean, I don't know him personally. I wouldn't say that he's a role model citizen on the football team. I wouldn't say that he's captain-esque. But again, I think that he showed toughness and durability last year whenever he was hurt. Not durability, when he was hurt and he was really going through an injury. So, yeah, hats off to him. So at bare minimum, Nico's got his tackles back. And then I think those other guys will start filing in, and you're going to get a pretty decent offensive line that you feel good about on paper. Now, did that offensive line have shortcomings this year? Sure it did. Was it I mean, it was a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award, which is given out annually to the nation's best offensive line. So, I mean, it's not like they were scrubs, I mean, it was pretty decent. But yeah, sure, they had their shortcomings a little bit, and they need players to develop at the interior. They need some depth at tackle. They certainly do. But that was big news. That was big news on a Monday night. Another thing that kind of took social media by storm, and I had a couple people, and if you're listening, thank you for tagging me, because I did see it on Twitter. Because this has never been the talk. There's been no chatter. Typically, when things happen, a lot of times we know it's going to happen, right? Or we know it's coming or something like that. Got tagged in a tweet on Twitter or on X Monday night, and it was Kamal Hadden tweeting out the eye emoji and an orange. Somebody said, "What's up?" He said, "Another year left." And so everybody's like, what's going on? And somebody tagged me in that, and so I do appreciate it if you're listening right now. But I go in there and, obviously talk to the team over VolQuest, and we check around, we poke around, we talk to some, confirm and try to figure it out. And everybody's like, no, he's done. He's done. He has no years of eligibility remaining. And it's just so frustrating in this era of COVID years. It's just confusing. Now, you have 4 years to play, okay? And I'll just use Kamal Hadden as an example. You have 4 years to play. He was at junior college in 2019. He played, okay? 2020 doesn't count for anybody. He played in 2021. He played in 2022, and he played in 2023. Those are your 4 years. Now, you don't just magically have a redshirt year to use at your disposal. You can't slap that on the 2022 season or whatever. That's not how it works. If you play in 4 years, you're done. And in 2020, everybody played, but it doesn't count for anybody. So I just thought it was kind of funny. I mean, heck, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that'd be good. Let's poke around here, because all we've heard about since his injury is, oh, he's done. He's out of eligibility. He's out of eligibility. Don't get me wrong. I wish there was another year of eligibility for him, because he was playing some elite football. He was playing elite football for Tennessee at the time of his injury. And so, but anyway, we did poke around. We did figure it out. We did, ask around and everything. He does not have any eligibility left. And so I don't know if he was just messing around, if somebody told him something that wasn't true. I don't know. But Kamal Hadden does not have any eligibility left. So anyway, some late night or late evening-ish news items I wanted to get in here in the podcast from a Monday. Still expecting some announcements as the week goes on, and we'll recap it all. We'll track it all for you right here on Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, we will answer your questions here on a mailbag edition of the show. Do want to give a shout out first to our friends over at FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offer stays hot at FanDuel. Gotta love that new copy, right? Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. I guess it's not that different, but that's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on that action. The app is so easy to use. I use it on a daily basis. A wide range of betting options that include spreads, which is the normal stuff that we talk about, player props, individual things that if you're new to FanDuel, I think you'll really, really enjoy, where you're paying attention to just one area of the football game, or maybe one player. Totals, overs, we love them here at Locked On Vols, or unders, and a whole lot more. It's at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your team wins. That's at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel.com/LockedOn to continue the NFL season this year. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Every Tuesday here on Locked On Vols, you everydayers get to take over the show with the mailbag edition of the weekly podcast. So without being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go to Todd. Todd says, has defensive back now turned into a position of need in the transfer portal? Potentially. Again, I mentioned they're looking at a safety from UCLA, or a cornerback from UCLA. They've offered Seed Gibbs from the FCS level. I don't think anything is super close to being done with a defensive back in the transfer portal. But, more than anything, that just frees up an opportunity to, continue development and play some of these young guys that you really, really liked in these past couple of recruiting classes. So we'll see what happens in that regard. But, losing all these guys, and again, I can't stress this enough, like, a lot of these guys are COVID seniors, and they've done a lot of good things for your program, and you like them. And again, there's a couple that I wouldn't mind having back on this team next year, but in normal years, they'd be gone anyway. So, like, is it a bad look? Like, oh, Tennessee's lost 9 players of the portal, 6 of which in the defensive backfield. I mean, sure, you can spew it any way you want. We can interpret stats any way we want and stuff like that, but in normal years, they'd be gone. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I do think Tennessee is looking at a couple of defensive backs in the portal. If one makes sense with multiple years of eligibility, I'm sure they'll bring him in. But at this time, nothing is super, super close to being done. Jared said, wouldn't targeting another receiver in the portal deter some already on the roster, such as Nimrod, Webb, Spillman, Laycock, from wanting to stick around and sit behind someone who's ready to play? At what point do you say, we don't need another wide receiver, we're fine, and we will win with the depth that we already have? Good question. Will say Tennessee needs more bodies at wide receiver. Just do. Look at this year, for instance. You came in, Brew McCoy got hurt, Dante Thornton got hurt. At a point in time, Dante Thornton missed even before a season-ending injury, missed a game here or there. Your numbers were scarce at wide receiver this year. At one point in time, I mean, as the season went along, you didn't really have, like, if Squirrel White got hurt, Chaz Nimrod would have to bump inside, and Webb would have to start on the outside. And then at that point, along with Ramel Keaton, you truly only had Nathan Laycock, and Nate Spillman didn't even dress for the majority of these games this year. Like, you only had, like, Nathan Laycock as a scholarship wide receiver available. You had some walk-ons that you could have, like Jack Jansen could have probably went in and played. My point is, you didn't have a whole lot of bodies at the receiver position. You had a lot of guys into the transfer portal last year. Both the Jimmies, Callaway and Holiday, into the transfer portal last year. Both have played for Tennessee. You had, the guy, what is his name? It's funny when you leave, I forget your name. From the Mid-State. Oh my goodness. What is his name? Oh my gosh, I hate this. Everyone's going to text me tomorrow when they're listening and say this guy. He went to Wake Forest. I can see his face. I can see his face right now. In 5 minutes, I'll remember his name and I'll come back and say it. But anyway, that guy, he left and he saw some playing time, with Tennessee over the years. So you just need more bodies. Again, Tennessee wants an outside receiver. I think they're going to try and go bring one in. Tennessee's brought in a receiver each of the past 3 transfer portal cycles. Javonte Payton, Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton. I expect that to keep up this cycle as well. Let's go to Noah. Noah says, with Joe Milton accepting his Senior Bowl invitation, Are you still of the opinion that he will play against Iowa? Until he says he's not, yes. But again, I had a lot more confidence earlier in December, like right after the Vanderbilt game. Again, he even said to the media, we have one more to go together. And so that kind of insinuated that he was going to play. But there's been some chatter that, maybe there's a decision to be made. So as of right now, I'll say yes, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. But I do think we're going to get that answer one way or the other, unless you see an opt-out graphic from him or not. I mean, coaches are starting to prepare for the Iron Bowl for Iowa, and they're going to need to know, this week. So at this time, I'll say yes, but it won't shock me at all if he ends up opting out. With all the DBs in the portal, does that concern you that we won't have these young guys, or give you optimism that something was figured out for our young guys internally? I mean, maybe I think a lot of it has to do with allocation of NIL, to be completely honest with you, and what makes sense from a business perspective and what doesn't. I think that has more to do with it. Plus, again, you have these young guys that you want to play, like Ricky Gibson, and you want to see what Jordan Matthews can do. CeeLo says, okay, a lot of DB talk. With all the DBs hitting the portal, what's this mean for Martinez? Is there anything new on his extension? If he leaves, do you think we'll see any of the younger DBs hit the portal as well? As of right now, the talk is that he's going to get an extension. He's the only assistant coach right now that's not under contract for the 2024 season. The talk here of late is that Willie Martinez will get an extension. So, again, it's not official. We'll see exactly kind of what comes of that. Let's go to Matt Beavers. With all the DBs hitting the portal, do they know something that the position coach is leaving? I don't think that's the case. That's a good question. Blue Light K9 says, is all the NIL deals for 1 year or usually multi-year? And do players have to repay if they opt out of the portal? Some of these questions I don't know, to be honest with you, in terms of NIL and how that's allocated. I do know of a couple players who are on multi-year deals. I do know of several players who are on 1 year deals. I think it can differ from player to player. I'm not going to even try to attempt to answer the whole, do you have to pay back money? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how all that works, and I wouldn't really feel comfortable talking about it because I think I have an idea, but if I'm wrong, I don't want to, say that on this show. But to answer the first part of your question, there's a lot of guys who are on 1 year deals, and that is not uncommon. Let's just get a couple more here before we end our show. James had a question last week, and I didn't get to it, essentially about someone. He screenshotted something on another show that we do and said, can we stop the narrative about playing young guys? Heupel is a coach's son. It's obvious that he prioritizes guys that win jobs and stay loyal to the program. That is part of the culture. My critique is when you're down by 40 in the fourth quarter, you should be playing young guys. When you're up 40 in the fourth quarter, you should be playing young guys. When you're getting repeatedly beat, play after play, throw in a young guy and see if that can change the difference. I'm not trying to say that, Nico should have been starting over Joe all year long, like a lot of people would. I'm not going to say that. But my point is, when you're down by 40 against Georgia, or when you're down 28 to whatever the score was, when you're down 38-10 in the fourth quarter to Georgia, why not play Nico? Why not play Ricky Gibson the rest of the way? Why not play Addison Nichols at guard? Why not bring in Sham to play tackle instead of putting an injured Gerald Mincey? And that is what I don't comprehend. I don't get that whatsoever. Is that going to make or break them as a player, getting a few snaps in a blowout, win or loss? Probably not, but it's experience. I mean, don't you think it'd be beneficial for Nico to get a couple series at Missouri in the fourth quarter when Tennessee were getting his brains beat in, the crowd environment, all that type of stuff, road SEC? I do. I mean, I truly do. So my biggest critique was, more so than anything, in wins and losses, blowout fashion, why in the world are you not playing more young guys? And even so, more than that, I think you should have saw Ricky Gibson play a whole lot more as part of the regular rotation. That's my biggest critique on the whole thing. Jacob says, is the high school tight end currently committed to South Carolina a possible flip candidate for Tennessee, or is it the fact that he hasn't made it in for a visit, say there's no interest? I think it's more the latter. Like, Michael Smith, teammates of Jake Merklinger, like there's an obvious connection there. But until he truly shows that Tennessee is a real option for him, then he's not a real option. He had so many chances to come up here to see a game or to come up here and take part of activities for a weekend, and he didn't. So I'm not going to say that it's never going to happen, but at this time right now, you can't view him as a viable candidate to flip him away from South Carolina. You just can't, in my opinion. I got a couple more. Let's go over to the Locked On Vols channel. Oh, Eric says, are there any Leos that can bulk up to play Strongside Defensive End? Good question, because that's what happened to Tyler Barron. Tyler Barron was a Leo in 2021, and he was always kind of a bigger guy and would be a best fit at a 5 technique or your traditional defensive end, which is what he did. He played the last couple of years, did a good job. James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, and Caleb Herring, all different body types than that of Tyler Barron. So no, I don't think that you'll see any of those three flip over. Now, Kellen Lindstrom is considered an edge committed guy in the class of 2024. I could see him playing that position. Carson Gentle, I could see him playing that position, another committed guy for the class of 2024. But the three that are on your roster right now, Roman Harrison leaving, James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, and Caleb Herring, I would say no, because their body type just doesn't really fit that. All right, got a couple more here, and we'll go to the YouTube channel. I went and found the questions in the comment section of YouTube, and I wrote them down, and I exited out of the document. I typed them out. I exited out of the document before I hit save, and that's my bad. So quickly, I will just scan the questions here. Vols fan in Georgia. Question for tomorrow: how long do the COVID seniors have to announce? Is there a deadline? Good question, because I don't think that there is a deadline. There's not necessarily a deadline, but again, you're putting your roster together. And we have a good idea. I went through a lot of those COVID seniors where I thought, lean to coming back, lean to leaving yesterday or the day before yesterday. I don't think there's necessarily a quote-unquote deadline, but the coaches need to know. And the coaches may know, but they just haven't announced it to the world yet. Like Jacob Warren, I think he announced that he was coming back last year in January, but like the coaching staff knew that he was coming back. You know what I'm saying? So there's no quote unquote deadline. But again, this week is big because you are truly building your roster for 2024. And so I think that the coaching staff will at least need to know this week, in my opinion. All right, we're going to call it quits right there. Thank you so much for sending in your questions, your comments, all that and more for the Mailbag edition of the show. Thanks as always for tuning in to Locked On Vols, the latest in transfer portal activity for the Tennessee Volunteers. We'll talk about it every single morning right here on Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here, you everydayers. And I haven't got the graphic made yet, so I haven't posted on social media, but we hit 10K on YouTube. I've been begging for that for like weeks. Thank you all so much for supporting the show on the YouTube channel, and of course, downloading the show wherever you listen to your podcast. Y'all are the best. Until tomorrow, guys, with Josh Ward for Lower Ward Wednesday, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody.